Hello everyone, and welcome to Clear and Concise, a technique which will help you improve the clarity of your questions. Before we get started, here's a real clear joke for you. I don't always tell dad jokes, but when I do, he laughs. Too often, the problem with a wrong answer is not with the answer, but with the question. It sounds obvious to note, but students should know what you are asking them if you want them to have a chance to answer correctly. Here are 5 ways to use the clear and concise technique to improve the clarity of your questions. Technique 1. Start with a question word. When you begin a sentence with who, when, what, where, why, how, or which, your students instantly know it's a question and can begin thinking about a response. Hearing a question word is an indicator to students that you are transitioning from instruction to discussion, from teacher talk to student talk. You also increase the likelihood that the kind of answer you want will be clear. For example, asking, "Can you add to that?" provides little guidance. It is unlikely to yield the kind of answer you want and to provide students with the chance to prepare a response they are confident in. Sentences that begin with are or is are fine too, although they often yield yes or no answers, and short responses that are hard to follow up on and don't usually yield great discussion. So try to keep your questions open-ended. Try to make sure that your students give you information that you can follow up on. Technique 2 is limit your questions to 2 clauses. Asking questions in ornate sentences that sound as if they've come from a 900-page novel may work for college professors, but often confuse students younger than college age. Make your questions rigorous and demanding, but limit them to 2 clauses most of the time, so students are clear on what you're asking. It's better to unload a question into 2 separate parts than it is to ask a complex and difficult 2-part question. Technique 3 is write them in advance when they matter. The best way to ask exactly the right questions is to script them in advance as part of the lesson planning process. Try to script both the initial question and your response if students aren't able to answer as you'd hoped. This is perhaps the single driver of better teaching that most developing teachers roundly ignore. Think about the best coaches in the world. Those coaches have a game plan. The best teachers do too. Technique number 4 is ask an actual question. Say, "Why doesn't Stuart think so?" rather than making a statement like, "But Stuart doesn't think so." If you do the latter and make a statement, students have the right to be confused. They'll think to themselves, "Are you asking them a question?" The last technique, number 5, is assume the answer. Ask, "Who can tell me?" Not, "Can anyone tell me?" The first assumes someone can answer, and a student thinks, "Who can?" "I can." "Can anyone?" expresses doubt that anyone will, and doubt makes students less likely to assume that someone like them should put up their hand. In my classroom, when I feel confident that I will get a response, I will often insert a student's name into the prompt. Remember, the purpose of this technique is to challenge students to think critically about your questions, not to think critically about what your questions mean.